And, of course, with this, there will be a nuclear exchange. One of the most interesting stories that's currently suppressed is the story of Sybil Edmonds. That's Sybil Edmonds, Edmonds. If you have a computer, you can go up and get her story and get information about it. But Sybil actually worked for the FBI as a translator immediately after the 9/11 attack. And she discovered that there was a spy ring operating at the highest level of the American government that was involved in transferring nuclear technology and nuclear material to Pakistan so they could build their nuclear weapons and share them with Iran and presumably share them with at least the knowledge with Iran and North Korea and Libya. Well, anyway, everything has been done to suppress this story because the last thing that the people who are in real control want is for the American people to know that we are building up the nuclear capacity of the Muslim nations for the coming war. I mean, just exactly as, immediately after the First World War, we built up the communist Chinese, the communists in Russia, and anybody who wants to get into that can get the books written by Professor Sutton, who is at the Hoover Institute. Of course, they got rid of him because they didn't want this information out, but we carry his book, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, the best enemies money could buy. And even we have an interview with Professor Sutton before he passed away called The Best Enemies Money Could Buy. And then, of course, the information on Vietnam. We financed the North Vietnamese government during the Vietnam War. Today, we're financing the Pakistan government that's financing Pakistan intelligence, that's financing the Taliban that are killing our boys in Afghanistan today. And, of course, we're doing everything we can, and we are still doing this, to build up the nuclear capacity of the Muslim nations in preparation for the coming war. They cannot let the American people know. For our listeners, go to my website at radioliberty.com, and we have a whole newsletter on the Sybil Edmonds story, and then begin doing research on it.
Okay.
And then right now you can pull down the Inspector General report on Sybil Edmonds. I think it's 130 or 140 pages of their investigation of her charges. And all those pages, almost every one of them is blacked out. Why would you submit a report with 130, 140 pages with most pages blacked out? Because they can't let the American people know that we're building up the nuclear capacity of the Muslim nations in preparation for the coming nuclear war.
Now is this going to be at a touchstone through Iran? Is this Iran going to be the next big phase? And if so,
I fear it is. Everything I'm hearing suggests that right now Israeli pilots are using American bases in Iraq for their training, and of course this is in preparation for an attack on Iran. The Israelis do not trust Obama. They think he's pro-Palestinian, and they will probably attack Iran. This is probably, I can't say it's going to happen, but they will probably attack Iran before the elections in November, and then, of course, we will be drawn into the war over there. That's the plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about the economy? We're just had some other banks, I believe, in California that just went belly up. I know First Bank of Nevada just did as well, too, here, just announced. What's the latest you've heard on the next steps that we should expect to see, and why is it happening?
Well, it was all planned. I mean, this whole thing was planned. From the Federal Reserve Board, Alan Greenspan did everything he could to bring about the housing bubble, got it to collapse, and then, of course, resigned and left Ben Bernanke there. You might be interested. We have a little pamphlet called The Financial Meltdown, where I tell you what I think, and I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that Alan Greenspan did what he did intentionally, but for far different purposes than the people who pay him and control him will ever realize. And so that's the conclusion of my little pamphlet on the financial meltdown. But basically what's going to happen is our economy is going to continue to implode. We're going to see inflation. Eventually the other countries in the world are going to, of course, stop using our currency as a reserve currency, which means that trillions of dollars will flood into America and destroy the value of our currency. With a plan is to impoverish the American people. And so the economy is going to keep contracting. The price of oil will probably come down, but certainly that is not going to solve the problem. We're going to see terrible things happening in America. We're going to see increasing famine, increasing homelessness, increasing disillusionment. And, of course, unless the people understand this has all been planned by the people who run our government, why they're going to look to the government for solutions. And unfortunately, the solution is ever more control over our lives and the loss of the freedom which was our heritage.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what our show not only tries to inform people, but we also try to offer solutions to people and give them suggestions on how they can use this information in a constructive way. What can you share with our audience on what they can do to best protect their families to endure in the days ahead, given this information?
Well, basically, people have to get out of debt. I mean, if you have a house, you're better off to be renting than in a house. If that, and a lot of the houses people are in now are worth less than the mortgage that they have.
Right.
The mortgage they're paying on. Get out of debt in whatever way you can, and change your whole way of life. Stop spending money. Pay off your bills. That's the first thing. Get out of anything that you have that is mediated in dollars, because they're going to destroy the value of the dollar through inflation, and this is the greatest and wickedest tax of all. But this is what they're going to do. And if they can destroy the value of our currency, they can destroy our economy. And this is what's going to happen. They say, oh, well, a low dollar is good for exports, and it will be. But unfortunately, the economy all throughout the world is contracting. So we're not going to be able to export as much as we have in the past. Japan's having problems. China's having real problems. The value of their housing has actually fallen 40%. People really might benefit from listening to some of our guests, because we have people who watch what's going on all throughout the world. The whole world is in a downward spiral economically, and we're going to see something that will make the Great Depression of the 30s look like child's play.
So
prepare yourself, but not only fiscally and financially, and if you can afford to buy gold and silver assets, do it, but prepare yourself spiritually, because only your relationship with the Lord is going to get you through the horrible times that lie ahead. And this is not scare talk. This is what really lies out there. But understand, behind everything are these powerful spiritual forces. When you understand this, it all makes sense. Otherwise, none of it makes sense.
Well, now, our listeners also have another civic duty that's going to be coming up in a few months. As citizens, they're expected to go into the booth and pull a lever to select the next president of the United States. Do you have any suggestions based on what you heard? I know you've certainly exposed a lot of information about our two major candidates right now. Are there anybody out there that you find reputable that our listeners can sort of lean or learn more about, both in the presidential area or any other kind of leaders, other people in society?
Well, certainly the perfect candidate is Chuck Baldwin. He's a minister in Pensacola. I've known Chuck personally for many years.
He's been a guest on our show.
Well, I'm glad you have. And of course, he's he basically is running on Ron Paul's ticket, and he's getting the conspiracy of silence from the controlled media. And of course, they don't want people to know they have an alternative. And people say he can't win. And wouldn't McCain be a lot better than Obama? McCain may be bad, but Obama's worse. And I say, when you vote for the lesser of two evils, you're still voting for evil. I would far rather actually, vote for Chuck Baldwin and lose than prostitute myself to vote for either one of those corrupt candidates. We have a great new posting we're putting up on our other video site today, and I hope your listeners will go to radioliberty.com, go to other videos. I hope we'll have this up today or tomorrow, and it's certainly a talk that's given by Ed Griffin, who I've known for 45 years, and Ed Griffin talks about the fact that Ron Paul could still win the Republican nomination. I'm not saying he's going to.
Now, this is the gentleman who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, is that correct?
Absolutely, the same one. And we'll be posting a YouTube conversation that he's put up there. Very well done, very factual. Certainly would be a long shot, but there is no reason why Ron Paul still couldn't get the Republican nomination. If the candidates, if the delegates simply said, we're not going to vote the first time around, and the second round they could vote for Ron Paul. And believe me, there are people all across this country who support him. I mean, he got, the majority of the people in Nevada. Of course, you're never going to hear this. He got a large number of delegates from Alaska. He got 25% of the Republican vote in Idaho. But all of this has been suppressed by the media. There is a tremendous growth, a tremendous movement out there to try to get back to our Constitution. You're just never going to hear about it by the controlled media, because AOL, Time Warner, Bertelsmann, Viacom, Disney, and Fox control literally 90 to 95% of the American media and determine largely what the American people think and believe.
It's another form of tyranny, correct?
Absolutely.
Just like we have, I know people on the right often try to fight civil tyranny and say our government is too big, and they rightfully fight that. And then people on the left say, well, wait a minute, there's corporate tyranny. Right. And the real truth is you've got the corporate people who are actually moving the puppets on the civil side, and they're two sides of the same coin. And then we have tyranny of the media. And really people have to make a personal decision not to seek the information from people who are bought and sold, and seek independent sources of information. You know, you're a gentleman who's not, you don't reach and receive millions of dollars from corporate sponsors when you do your radio show. I'm assuming that. I'm assuming you don't get that.
You're absolutely right. In fact, I wish somebody would offer me $1 million, but unfortunately, we have just a lot of little people out there really concerned. But basically,
nobody's putting words in your mouth, is what I'm trying to say. You're just taking information and making it available to people, and that's what I call reliable information.
Let me just suggest for your listeners, if you want reliable information, why go to worldaffairsbrief.com. That's Joel Scouse site. We interview Joel a couple of times a week on our program, but World Affairs Brief has great information. Newsreviews.com. Ed Griffin has a website with great information on it, and of course you can go to my website. But we're not a daily news service. We just try to. But you can listen to our programs there, which are a daily news service, which will keep you abreast of what's going on. And that's at RadioLiberty.com. You can listen to the live feed. You can listen to the feed 9 hours a day to our satellite, along with, of course, several other people, Joyce Riley, Pastor Butch Paul, Pastor Chuck Christmeyer, on our 24-hour-a-day satellite feed, and it's very inexpensive to get that, and you can listen 24 hours a day and not get anything accomplished.
Well, but the thing is, you listen to that information, you will not be manipulated by corporate interests that are selling you an advertisement thinly disguised as news. Right. And that's what I think is very, very important. I know we're getting here to the end, but just in the news recently, Dr. Dobson, who is a representative of the very popular leadership within evangelical circles, has sort of come around and said, well, even though he said he couldn't support McCain, now he guess maybe he could. He's sort of being won over by that lesser of two evils foolishness, and has now decided that he can, lean toward a guy who, if I remember correctly, stood in the way of the selection of judges that would have been pro-life. He actually was part of a group of Democrats and Republicans together that tried to basically take over the Senate and try, like a little mafia, try to dictate what passed or didn't pass. So he's leaning in this direction, and we have all of these who they think they are very powerful Christian leaders. They think they have power within the Republican Party. I think it's illusory, but they refuse to look in directions like one of their own, like Chuck Baldwin, a fellow minister of the gospel, refused to look that way. What can we as Christians do to put pressure on these leaders, either to ignore them or to try to get them to understand that we expect them to give us information that's consistent with what they say their spiritual beliefs are?
Well, I think Dr. Dobson is one of the really great men of our time. I think she's sincere. I think he is, has done a great deal of good, but he has terrible advisors. You can't reach Dr. Dobson. I have tried to reach him. I've actually had the opportunity to talk to him at meetings personally, but you try to reach him through regular channels, they have him surrounded, and they've infiltrated his ministry, and he's getting terrible advice. And believe me, sometimes when people keep telling you a lie, pretty soon you get to believe it, and I think this is what's happened to Jim Dobson. He does not run his organization. It is run by others, and I believe it literally almost every one of our Christian ministries has been infiltrated by people from the other side who have an agenda, and that is the New World Order, the New World Religion, and the New World Leader.